Good morning, it's the 19th of November 2023, and in this video we're going to look at goal setting, Goalsetting. So a goal, what you want to do, what you want to make, what you want to achieve, whatever it is, and how I go about it. Now this is taught in universities, but this version is not. It was through learning it in a university that I spotted this version, and this version works really good. Now, first of all, you have to set the goal you want, and you can have a broader long-term goal, uh, or you could have short-term goals to achieve that. Now I try and give you a few examples. One funny one here is a goal here now is this one. And that is if I wanted to learn to play the fiddle, right? Another one is if you lived in 1720, we'll say, the year 1720, and you wanted to be an airline pilot. Okay, now we look at both of these. You draw a line, it's an inverted Y. You draw a line, right? An upside down Y. And this is the environment in which you're in. This is where you are. Environment is unfortunately a very swanky word. Be better ones. The situation you're in, the country you're in, the period you're in. You see, so it all depends on the timing. I mean, there was a time in human history when people lived over on the Asian steppes, and the Mongol warlord Genghis Khan would come, and that meant possibly death, destruction, all kinds of hardship, and that was the situation you're in. So your goal in that situation might be simply to hide on him or get out of his way. If you're going to fight him, that was difficult. You needed to coordinate that effort. So the environment you're in is always a line of an inverted. An inverted means upside down. In the Republic of Ireland, you say upside down. In Northern Ireland, you say downside up. Okay. All right, we can have a bit of fun. Now, if I want to play the fiddle, I have something going for me. In the environment, I have a fiddle. Here's a fiddle. It's an old fiddle. It could be quite good. I have no doubt it'll play a tune, right? So we look at the fella that wants to be the airline pilot, and in 1710 there are no airlines. In fact, it'll be another 100 years till anyone even thinks of the concept. Leonardo da Vinci thought up a helicopter, but it'll be, you're talking about 1900. When did the Wright brothers fly? We're talking about 1920, about any significant airplanes at all, and you're talking about after the Second World War, when commercial air passengers crafts, airliners, came common. And in the 50s, people could fly to the United States on an airplane. So the end of the war, 1950 was about the time you'd have to live in to become an airline pilot. So if you lived in 1720, it's out. It's out. All you could do then is change to being a sea merchant or a sea captain. And if you wanted to be a sea captain, you had to go to America or England perhaps, and you had to sign on perhaps as a tea maker, as a cabin boy. But if you wanted to get up, you had to embark on study. You might have to work on the ship half the year and then go on shore and study. And if you were lucky to have someone to help pay for you very good, you could do it a different way. You could join the navies, you could join the military, and the military would help you to become educated. The problem of that is when the war would start, you could get a big cannonball could take the head off you. So essentially, that's the thing you have to think of. So what we're looking at here is the ways to achieve what you want. So, all right, this fella does join the military. He gets through the wars. He's now 45, and he goes and he wants to explore the world, and he goes as a second in command, whatever they are. I don't know what the name of those. And then he has a good job done on that, and then he applies to become a captain, and he goes off exploring somewhere in a big ship, either from America or from Canada or Britain or wherever, Germany, wherever. So the point is we take the two different things. I have the fiddle, but there's no strings and there's no bow. So the first thing I have to do in here is draw my sub goal. What I have to achieve it. So the first thing is your goal. You're in getting your goal is your environment. And the next thing is your means to achieve that goal. If the environment is wrong, if the date is wrong, you cannot achieve it. So we're going to just look at here. We draw in our line here. And this is it. So there's the line. I hope you can see it over the top of the chair. Maybe you can't. I'll bend just down. You see it there? See it there? No. It's just the camera's a bit wobbly. Now, so there is, in my case, it's to get strings in the fiddle, right? Get strings, find out where to buy them, go up to Walton's or whatever and get their address. And when you go up to Walton's in Frederick Street, they're gone out of there. So you have to ascertain the place where Walton's now are, and you can ring them up and you can do all that. Now, on the other hand, you might just get a job as a cabin boy on the ship. And then as you go on, then you have your fiddle and you have the strings. The next thing you have a string, you have to get the fiddle tuned, right? So you have to get it tuned and try to do it right. Root about it, or get someone to tune it and get it tuned and get your bow and get your rosin and start that you can actually take it like this and do a bit of playing on it, you see? So the fella with the wants to be a sea captain now has got a job on the ship as a tea boy, and he wants to get a bit of education. So he decides and has to decide, will he join the Navy, or will he be able to make enough, or will he be able to get someone to sponsor him, or will he be able to make enough on the shore? Could he work on shore loading ships? Maybe he could work on shore, and he could get enough to go to Naval College and do his Admiralty on all the various courses in navigation and everything. So education will become a big part here as he wants to be in the ship. Now I have my fiddle, and the next thing I'll need to do, I have to be educated. I have to learn to play it, right? I have to learn to play it. And that's the hard job. So I draw my line here, you see there? And while this fella here is learning to be a seafarer, this guy here is learning to play. And he might go and he might get music lessons. It only has one string. He might have one string. So he might get music lessons. So you see here that education is coming in, and I'm going to write it here. E D. So you see that education plays a role, and in most goal setting, some form of education is important. And the more advanced you get in life and the more years you live, the better, the more educated you are, if you're that way inclined. If, on the other hand, your preferred occupation for the rest of your life is digging potatoes with a spade and bringing them out, well, if it's 1720, you might be okay. You'll probably be able to dig spuds and maybe sell a few of them or get a few bob, or go to Scotland and do tatty hoking or whatever. If you go to Scotland during the First World War, you'll be drafted into the army and you'll be killed away over in Europe. So the thing about it is, this fella here, he getting educated. Now he can also go into the military and take a risk. But if he goes into the military, he can put himself forward for all the courses there are, and he can show that he's interested in this, and hopefully someone will take an interest in him. And generally speaking, if it's Ireland, they certainly won't. They have there's another feature you must remember. In anywhere you're depending on another, if you're very smart, they see you as a threat. So in Ireland, in the military, in the Navy, in the Gardaí, in the medical profession, in the teaching profession, a very intelligent person is seen as a threat. And they have a mechanism that the headmaster of a big school could say such a one's not fit for promotion, or not fit to be teaching, and that is hidden, and you might never be able to see it. Now, they've improved that a bit in that you can, and in many of the services and many of the military, many of the Gardaí and even the police in England, if some officer writes that you're a wrong one, even though it's total lies, it's very hard to overcome it. Now, they have tried to amend that a bit. So that's again the environment. You see the environment way back in Ireland in 1970, if a high-ranking police officer wrote about a young man that he was a young officer, that he wasn't good, that there was something wrong with him, that could never be erased. Now it probably is, and you see that's the environment changing. You see the environment changing. See that there was a time then a fella, I would say a man who was gay had to hide it. Now they've changed the law a bit, maybe a bit too much in my way, but they have at least left it that he can say, well, I'm not heterosexual, I just want to get on with my work, and they can't really block him. And that's the thing, you see. So the environment is changing. You see, there was a time way back in the 1600s where the only way to get on was to be a clergyman, either in the Church of England in England or in the Catholic Church, be a clergyman. And many of the great scientists were actually clergymen because it's the only way they could get a bite to eat while they were studying this stuff. So you see the very important point, folks, on 11 minutes. The environment. This is the length of the Y. You see it down here, your means to achieve it. See this? This environment has to be achievable. There's no point in you doing the means to achieve it if it's not available. You cannot become an airline pilot in 1720 or even any time in the 1700s. It's out. It's good night. You could start trying to make an airplane, but you'll never get there. So you have to go back to something else and decide to be a seafarer. And I went through that. So you see, your environment, your means to achieve it, and up here at the joint is your goal. In the case of the fiddle, the first goal was to find out where it could get strings on a bow. Now, if that figured, the next goal then is to get it tuned and get it going. The next goal then is to try and learn to play it, and into that then education arrives in. So you can go and get lessons and get someone to teach you, or you can root around it yourself. But if you go without the education, it's much harder. If you were stranded on a desert island for 30 years and all you had to entertain yourself was this, you'd probably end up playing it fairly good. But it's when you do the education, you are learning from the previous mistakes of people. And so if you take the design of a ship, at the moment, a passenger liner, there's a double hull, there's two sheets in the vessel, in the bulkhead, so that if the first hull, if the water breaks in, it can't get down. That's what happened in the Titanic. When the first one was gashed by the iceberg, the water could flow in all around the ship and eventually sink her. So you cannot build a ship like that. You won't be allowed. The law will stop you. So the legal environment has changed so that you have to have that double hull. You can't have that. The same as if you're designing an aircraft nowadays, a passenger liner, you have to comply with certain things. There has to be certain things that are made stronger, made better, made of better materials, because they already know this has cost lives. You try to do it yourself, you don't know what has caused lives before. What has caused lives before? What has cost lives before? So it applies in all walks of life. If you take politicians in Ireland anyway, their goal is to keep in office. Very few want to do any good. They just want to stay in there, grab all they can, and get back in and hold on to their position till they're ready to be, clogs are ready to go up. They never retire, and they want to hold on to it. So the environment they're in is this environment. That's the way things are. So how can they increase their chances of being re-elected, assuming that they're useless and no good for anything? Well, one way is when they're in the council, if they're councillors or if they're politicians, to be friendly with councillors. And when somebody applies for something like maybe they're 65, a pension, to try and get it refused. So the people who work in the various offices, the civil servants, are told by the councillors, keep an eye on planning, right? This fella has applied for a new house, don't give it to him. Or keep questioning about it. Or this fella has applied for a pension. Is there any loophole there? Well, actually, his income mightn't be just right. He might have a bit too much income. Right. Don't refuse it. Keep writing to him and tell him, dear sir, we need this, and keep making it very, very awkward. So that's your means to achieve it. He's in here, you see here, that's his goal. He's in the council, or he's a TD, and he knows all the people in his area. He has a say in appointing people, and he has a say in the allocation of money. And in some cases, TDs and councillors have a say in actually groups that get money, or generally speaking, where they are. So they get the civil servants in there to refuse, say no, or don't give it to them, drag it out and leave it going on. So eventually, then, in frustration, this fella will, we're talking about here the goals of the politician. This fellow will go to the politician and say, well, I'll look at it for you now, it'll take a lot of work, I'll do my best. And so he sends him an odd letter there doing that. And after 3 months, he meets your man or something. He says, I'm going all right, I'm just trying to do this and that. And then he'll tell the person, grant him, give him that pension. And I've so often heard people who were entitled to the pension saying, I couldn't get it. And then because I went to Joe Bloggs, the TD, and I got it in a week. So that's the vote, signed, sealed, and delivered. And they do that all the time. And the fact that they're only giving them what they're entitled to doesn't matter. So you see there the environment of where you are in rural Ireland. What's your means to achieve it? Square all the councillors, get the council staff, get Burklonola, get them all, and they do pass laws to make it an offence to interfere in planning and all that, but try and show that if there's planning permission, it's delayed or something, and get them in. And that came home to me in a planning of a housing estate once, where I studied the law and I objected to Burklonola. It was granted by the council, and I objected to the Burklonola, and a person working in the council rang me and said, you don't do that. You come to me if you have a problem. I said, you've nothing to do with you. This is the planning service. Oh yes, it is. I work in the planning service. All right. I said, well then you can't. They granted the housing estate. So I said, stop that. You don't grant. I went in anyway, and I went to Burklonola, and he blew a fuse, and I told him where to get off. Eventually, anyway, the builder had to meet the whole group and meet me, and we hammered out something. He did not like me for it. So it's clear what was happening there. The local council staff were running with the builder. They were going to grant it anyway, and maybe they were getting something out of it. And there was a bit of opposition, so they were giving a water hose up the road for a few people, and then that was done. And that was the way it's done. And I was told that, and when I came in and objected, they blew a fuse, and I, of course, being me, let him go to hell. And they had to meet us, and they didn't like it. And just to be a different, there was an old lady there, a bit of an odd kind of a delicate kind of woman, and we appointed her a spokesperson, and that drove them mad altogether. Those fellas there with big cigars, and we had her totally primed what to say. So very often when you're setting these goals, this is the goal. See, all along here you have the goal 1, goal 2, goal 2. You have the fiddle, that's your environment. Get the strings, get the bow, get the fiddle, what do you call it, tuned. Now educate yourself, learn how to play it, go to music lessons or whatever, and then go along. You now have to fiddle, and you have to try and become a star, and that's the big job. You probably won't make it, but you might become a sea captain if you work hard enough and you stick to it. Or in the present environment, if you were born today and you want to be an airline pilot, piloting passenger aircraft, for example, you'll see them there on YouTube. You have to go through these steps. The environment is there's plenty of flying, never was more commercial flying. You'll have to get your basic education, you'll have to get your primary and your secondary education. Then you'll have to decide if you're going for this, you might go to an appropriate university where you might study a course like meteorology or something, and then you go into you make your application, and of course your environment gets you again, because if you have bad health, if you have bad eyesight, that might block you, and then you can't become a pilot. If you're subject to epileptic fits, you can't become a pilot. You just have to forget about it. You have to forget about it. But that doesn't mean you couldn't work with, say, as a ground staff or repairing airplanes or checking the tire pressures. There's something you could do if that's what you want to do. And then you now do your education. You now do your education. The next thing then is get in with an airline, whether it's Ryanair or Aer Lingus. You usually be a small operator. You might fly commercial FedEx or some of those what do you call DP? You know that those you know the what do you call them? The postal service, and there's all these delivery. I'll just think of the name here. Yeah, couriers and all that stuff. So, you know, the FedEx is one and there's several others. Amazon is another one. So you might get in originally flying commercial aircraft where there's no passengers, and you might get going on that for a few years, and then you apply for your big goal is to get flying an airplane, a small passenger airplane, we'd say Air Aran or something, up and down to Donegal, and then eventually your goal is to become with the three stripes, and you get on a big jet, a big jumbo jet, or a 320 Airbus or whatever. Now you're the assistant pilot, and all you have to do is keep your nose clean, be good, study a bit more, mind yourself, and as this fella retires, you'll reach your goal up here. You will become a full pilot. You'll get all of your wings. You'll have 4 stripes on your shoulder. Do you see now how goal setting works? There are versions of this available and taught in universities, but this is my own one. This one is reduce it down, simple. This is the environment in which you work. You see the inverted Y's, a Y upside down, and your means to achieve it. So it's your environment, your means to achieve the goal, and then you set the goal. Here it's to get the strings, here it's to get the bow, here it's to learn how to play it and get it tuned, right? So your goal is here. Next is to become a better player. Next might be get in with a group and learn to play better. And then when you get up to here, you might like to be on RTE, late show, oh God help us. But you might maybe get to the stage where you're a very, very good fiddle player. You might get in with a pop group doing it. You might get in with something. You might do what you want. But of course, the superstar bug is not a good bug. I know a lot of people went down that road, young people, and they end up they don't become, there's only a very few become stars. So now I hope I've made that clear. The environment where you're in, you have to assess that. What is there? And it's like me if I'm doing a job on the farm and I need to put a bit of wood or a board there. Rather than going into the hardware shop, I might have a piece of board in the shed. So I go down and check what's there, and I design it to do that. You already have the thing. I mean, you buy a hammer, it could do you for 700 jobs. It doesn't go away. So you look at what you have in your own environment. What's there to suit you? I mean, I was born onto a farm, and I bought a bit of land, and I was in an accident, and I got a bit of compensation, and I kept adding to my land, and so I built that up gradually to be where I'm now, where I'm producing good cattle, and I can take it a wee bit easier. I can't live forever either. So again, then when you get to be the pilot, eventually someday you'll have to retire. That's life, and you go on to something else. So as you go up towards it, you might change your goal then to have a new retirement or some other thing to do with teaching aircraft or whatever, air control or whatever it is, doesn't really matter. You get the point. You assess your environment you're in. You set your goals according to that environment. That'll to do with the date you're born, how the advanced state of technology. You then have to achieve these sub goals here, and when you achieve each one, this is the first 2, 3, 4. You see there, there's 4, right? There's 5, there's 6, and there's 7. And so each goal is a step to the next goal. Does that do you, folks? You'll probably find that a bit heavy weather. That has worked like a dream. And very often you have to write down, you have to make a wee report. And if it's something very controversial or that, or somebody is trying to fight a battle, or it's a legal battle or something, you might have to write it down in a chronographical order. And that's a skill in itself. It's a skill I have. I'm good at it, but I'm only 80% good. I have a couple of friends who help if I have a problem, and they're nearly 95% good. They get it done. And to be able to write down something that an ordinary Joe Sub can write. So one of my main goals in my communication skills is, and you may notice that about me, if I write or if I speak, so that everyone understands the point. You'll notice me repeating the same sentence twice, so that people say, I now know where he's coming from. How many people have heard pop songs and never been able to hear the words? How many really could hear Blondie's songs? Many could hear Madonna's songs, really. Many could hear Michael Jackson's songs and understand them. I'd say if the hard push came to shove, a lot of them couldn't, right? Unless you see it written down. So communicating is very important. Your method of communicating, clear and distinct, repeat where necessary, but not excessively, and think what does the person want to know. Some people start off a conversation with me, they hurry the first sentence, and they want to go on for hours talking, and I haven't understand what they're on about. Are you talking about a boat now? Are you talking about a frog? Are you talking about a dog? No, I'm talking about a cat. I told you that. Sorry, I didn't hear you talk about the cat. So now I know what you're on about. You're on about the cat. Go ahead. Do you understand that? So communicating is very important in this way. And if you're an airline pilot, you have certain codes of communication, and it's very precise. It's a life and death situation. There's no room for any messing. You have to be on the job. The downside of that is you often might have to sit for 8 hours on an aircraft, and it's not that easy doing that. So anyway, that's the point now on that 28-minute video. That's how you set your goals, your environment, your means to achieve your goal, and then you set each goal as you go on till you get your final goal up here. You might have 25 of those running at any one time in your life, or your company. Could be a company either. Sure, a lot of the big hardware shops, they all started small. They started with an idea, they build them up, and they hire the correct staff and making the right decisions along the way. And so they all follow this, even though they don't realize they're following it. This is the most concise. There's only 3 things to it. Only a line down this. It's a Y. You have a goal here. You have a Y down. And these are the means to achieve that goal. Very long video. I hope you enjoyed it. I did go repeat myself a bit, but no, that works. That's a great idea for any youngster or anything else, or oldster or anybody else. How you decide where you want to be at a certain time. That's where I want to be, and I'm going to work through this. And you will notice, unfortunately, for some, education does come into it. That doesn't have to be formal education, but I do not know how it can be done without some form of education, formal or informal. Give me a thumbs up, give me a thumbs down, tell me I'm useless, tell me I never heard a load of nonsense in all your life. Have the crack anyway, and it's something different. Thank you very much. Bye.